Hi, welcome to Meet the Makers, a video series where I put questions to creators from around the world about their videography and photography businesses, mainly in the wedding industry. But first, I want to share with you a short video about a workshop for videographers and photographers I have coming up later in the year. If you'd like to learn more about the workshop, there's more information in the description below. Today, I'm going to be talking to Ben from Side Project Films, a New Zealand-based wedding videography company. Ben's films are a perfect blend of the emotional and the fun elements of weddings. Ben has been working in the industry for many years and even runs his own podcast series about wedding filmmaking. So let's jump straight in with question 1. Hi Ben, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I want to jump straight in with the first question, which is, how did you get into videography in the first place?
Sure, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. How did I get into videography? So, basically through dancing. So I used to be a dancer for many years, and I got a sort of entry-level Nikon DSLR for my 21st birthday, and started mucking around with it. And that was in the early days of like DSLR video. I think I only did like 720p or something. And yeah, my friends and I just started mucking around making dance videos and stuff, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I sort of up until that point, up until getting a camera, I always imagined I'd be like an illustrator or an animator. I went to animation school. I did a degree in graphic design, illustration. That was what I imagined I would do. But then I got this camera, and then I was like, this is way better. This is why I felt I can get the ideas in my head out through this camera way easier than I could ever drawing. And so I just fell in love with it immediately, and then combined my two sort of loves of like dance and video, and just went from there. And then sort of fell out of love with dance, and the dance sort of crew that me and my friends had was called Side Project. And so then when the dance crew fell away, I kept the name, and then that became my sort of videography company, Side Project Films. So that's how that all came about.
So what sort of videos were you making? Were you making dance videos or?
Yeah, so it was sort of like, quote unquote cinematic dance videos, sort of like things where, I like rigged up this sort of gyroscopic Steadicam thing, with like, stuff from the hardware store,
right?
And sort of like moved around and would like choreograph the camera movements with the dancing. And, if anyone's ever seen, like Paris Goebel's music videos for Justin Bieber and stuff, it was all that sort of style.
What is it that made you decide to move that into weddings? Did you just see it as a business thing, or did you just fall into it?
Yeah, it was honestly a way of like sort of when the light bulb clicked in my head of like, okay, I like this camera is, I'm not going to pursue like illustration and drawing and stuff like as my career. I'm going to focus on this camera and what I can do with it. I started thinking of how I could make money, and I saw the kind of cinematic wedding films that were starting to come out of the States. Very early days of the sort of DSLR wedding video craze, and was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And then just figured that was be a fun way to just start, and a way to get paid to make some cool videos and run around with the camera.
Did you shoot a friend's wedding or something first, or did you just go straight in as a business?
Yeah, I shot I've told this story a few times. I shot my ex-girlfriend's wedding. It was the first wedding I ever shot, and the first wedding I ever went to.
Wow, that's an experience.
Yeah. So no, it's got we're good friends and stuff. But yeah, and I did that one for free and was just like, hey, do you mind if I like try and make you a wedding video and see how it goes? And she was like, sure, why not?
Did she like it at least?
Yeah,
Okay.
they loved it. Yeah, they're really happy.
Okay. And
Yeah,
how long ago was that? Was that a few years ago?
so that'd be probably coming up 10 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you just slowly build up how many you did each year, or did you?
Yeah. Sort of, my first wedding was free. I think I did the next one for like a work colleague for like $200, and then just slowly, eventually, just word of mouth built up, and
Okay.
yeah.
Your style of videography, that's what I noticed about you first. You've got quite a strong style. How would you describe that? And how did you settle on that sort of thing? Did it come from your dance videos, or was it just something that grew organically?
So yeah, I describe my style as like elegant fun, I guess. Like I always try to make like, especially like more these days, my films have a really sort of polished, elegant sort of, level to them, but at the same time keep them really, really fun. I don't want the films to take themselves too
Yep.
seriously. Yeah, and I love like quirky editing styles and like upbeat music and
Yep.
like fast-paced films, fast-paced editing. I love that, but at the same time, I want it to feel really like slick and high-end and beautiful. And yeah, I feel like those two things combined is where I've sort of landed my
Yeah,
style.
yeah. No, that definitely comes
Yeah.
across. That definitely comes across. You've got it where you're not going too far down either of those routes. I think it's nice. You've got a good balance there with that. And so is that something that just happened, or is it something you've been working on, chipping away at over the years?
I guess because I certainly started off with the more traditional wedding film style of like super emotional,
Yeah.
slow, lots of slow motion, and then I eventually sort of got bored of that and went a bit more crazy, and then I kind of got a bored of the like only craziness, and so I've sort of come back to this middle ground where it's like elegant but it's still really fun. And I guess that's me just sort of like pushing and pulling on those two sort of
Yeah.
you know ends of like the wedding film spectrum as they are at the moment, and sort of finding my little spot.
What camera gear do you use, and what other equipment do you use for your films?
Yeah, so gear wise, I've been on Canon for a few years and been on like the sort of Canon cinema range for a few years.
Okay.
Started with the C100,
Yep.
200, and I'm
Yep.
now on the C70,
Okay.
and I'm really loving it. I'm sort of, like my sort of camera body's got bigger and bigger. I went from my like Nikon DSLR to the C100, and I was like, oh, that's a real camera. And then the C200 is even bigger, and I was like, oh, that's even more of a real
Yeah,
camera.
yeah.
And I got to the point now where like sort of started playing with the C70, and I actually really liked going down that form factor still. Like obviously it's still a big camera,
Yeah.
but the image is stunning on it. I've really, really loved working with 10-bit footage. And yeah, it's just beautiful. And so yeah, that's my main camera. I've paired it with an EOS R. I'd love that to be an R5, but just not on the budget at the moment. So yeah, my second shooter often uses the EOS R, and then I've got a little, I think it's called like an XC10. It's this weird little old. It's got like a built-in lens and stuff, but like it can shoot 4K and stuff, and I use that for like backup ceremony angles, and all my time lapse work during the day. That's like my time lapse camera that just gets plonked around the venue, different spots throughout the day. And yeah, I pretty much film on like the lens I keep on my C70 all day is the Sigma 18-35. And then like the last piece of the puzzle that sort of like links all my gear is that I have TIFF and ProMist filters
Okay.
on all my lenses,
Yeah.
which I've sort of I've been using for a while. I started by trying to like digitally create the look of a
Yep.
ProMist filter,
Yep.
but I sort of was just like, screw it, I'm just gonna buy ProMist filters, and I love it. Like that's for me part of the kind of like vintagey, elegant vibe is the kind of the the texture that the ProMist filters give.
Which ProMist is it, out of interest? Is it what strength?
Just the quarter. So black,
Okay.
yeah. So the black quarter,
Okay.
which I feel like it was a sweet spot where you can see it. It's not like so subtle that you can't see it, but it doesn't take over the image.
So that's like cameras and stuff like that. Do you use anything like gimbals or anything, or are you just tripods and monopods, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I try to mix things up. Like I use my gimbal when I want the more elegant feel, and especially like venue details. I do a lot of the like sort of starting like with the camera looking up and like sort of sweep down to reveal the venue and all those sorts of big sweeping moves. I feel like I want to use the gimbal when I want it to look like a gimbal, and then I shoot handheld when I want it to look like handheld. And I feel like those two feels, like the elegant gimbal and then the more sort of organic, frenetic handheld, sort of creates that sort of merging of the two styles.
Yeah, no, that's nice. So do you have particular parts of the day you're going to be using one or the other, or is it just depend on the wedding and the day?
So like prep is all handheld mostly. They're like the last wedding I shot, they had a particular little thing where they wanted to like sit outside by the pool and pop some champagne. So I got the gimbal out for that to like make it, and did like a long lens gimbal shot for that. But like, yeah, so prep's usually always handheld. Ceremony is usually gimbal. Post ceremony canapé hour is usually handheld because that's more of like the sort of like hugging, kissing, really close up kind of, energy stuff. And then, yeah, like I said, all the kind of like venue establishing shots is always pretty much gimbal. Photo shoot, mix it up, but of both. And then like first dance is always gimbal, but then when it's partying, it's always handheld.
Okay, no, I can see that. That makes sense. Yeah. So things like ceremony, are you handheld then, or are you on a?
No, so ceremony, so what I do is I put my second shooter up the front on a monopod, and they're on like celebrant and groom, if there's a groom, and then I'm on gimbal for most of that. That way, I can make it feel like a monopod when I need to for like the vows and stuff, but then I can also follow them out.
You must have some strong arms and upper back.
It's not the lightest setup. Yes,
Yeah.
C70, which is a heavy camera. The 18-35, which is a heavy lens.
Yeah.
And then I'm on like the original Ronin S, which is a heavy gimbal.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it weighs about the same as my son. So.
Okay. What about audio gear? Do you have set up for that?
Audio gear? Yeah, I've actually like recently sort of simplified a lot of my audio gear right down. So I use one of the Tascam, the wedding videographer's friend. The
the DR10s.
DR10s.
Yeah.
So I use that. I've also got a little super low profile. Is it here? No, somewhere else. A little super low profile Sony recorder that I attach to the handheld microphones. I used to use like a feed from like the PA system or the DJ as my like primary, audio captures for like the speeches and stuff. But I've had that fail so many times that like that's now my backup option. So like I'll get a feed from the DJ as a backup, but I always I sort of rely on the recorder attached to the handheld mic because I've had enough handheld mic batteries die on me or frequency and interruptions or.
So in terms of post-production, what's your editing setup? What do you use software-wise for editing?
So I'm currently on Final Cut Pro 10. I switched from Premiere a few years ago, mainly for the hardware factor. So I've found Premiere taxed my computer too much. So I've got a Mac Pro, like the old trash can, 2013 Mac Pro, and just found Premiere was struggling on that. So I switched to Final Cut, which runs on the Mac hardware way more efficiently, and loved it. Like it took a while to learn the whole magnetic timeline and everything, but I actually edit way faster now. Like I really like leaned into the keyboard shortcuts, and like sort of editing like Final Cut wants you to edit. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people turn their nose up at Final Cut, is that if you want it to work well, you have to edit how Final Cut wants you to edit. And once you do that, it's really fast and really efficient. And all the little magnetic timeline shortcuts just work for you like 90% of the time. And then there's like really easy ways to revert back to a more manual version when you need the fine controls.
Do you use any plugins or anything for that? Do you use any color grading
Yeah,
plugins?
so I use there's a denoiser that I often reach to. So it's the Crumple Pop audio denoiser, which works really well if it's like a windy ceremony, or if there's like cicadas, or just general background noise that you want to drop out and get a really clean vocal. I find that works really well. I've got a LUT that I've developed, and basically like lay that on top on a adjustment layer, and then do all my correcting under that just natively. And I've got a loop deck that I've got hooked up to Final Cut, and it's pretty simple. Like, you don't get all the all the hue saturation sliders. It's basically just like mids, highs, lows, saturation temperature, but it's enough that I can basically have one hand on my mouse, one hand on the dials, and just like move from clip to clip, and just like really quickly grade a film.
What would you say is your biggest mistake you've made?
Yeah. So I mean, I've told this story a few times, and it's the second half of the story of my first wedding. So, yeah, first wedding I ever shot, first wedding I ever went to, my ex-girlfriend's wedding. I was being very clever and wanted to get a nice shot of her getting in the limo at home, and the limo driving out of her drive as she headed off towards the church. And I got a nice shot of the car like leaving down the driveway. And I grabbed my bags and I toddled back to the car, and I got in the car and I was like, she's going to arrive at the church and walk straight in. I'm going to miss her. And I did. I missed her walking down the aisle. So right. Yeah, I missed the bride walking down the aisle on my first wedding. So yeah, don't do that. But again, like, they loved their film and they were really happy. So yeah.
I mean, it's your first one. You're allowed to make that mistake on your first one. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but it's it's not really something you want to miss. So several years ago, I was getting like busier and busier and busier, and I had all my like classic creative self-employed person, like, had no business process or anything. I had like some dodgy Excel spreadsheet where I had all my weddings logged and stuff, and I ended up double booking a few weddings and missing stuff, and I got into a bit of some issues with that, and then sort of eventually pulled finger and invested in a CRM, like a client management system. And since putting the effort into that and really like locking down my workflow, my process, and making sure that like no other couples got missed basically in future, that's been a lifesaver.
Who or what would you say has most influenced your work? It doesn't have to be in the wedding industry, but it could be, or it might be movies, it might be films, it might be dance. I don't know. What is it for you?
Yeah, there's a few bits of inspiration that I tend to sort of like keep going back to. Certainly in the wedding film world, my like good mates and now co-hosts Bottlebrush Films, I'm always looking at their work and getting inspired with what they're doing. And then some other Aussie locals, Humdrum Films. Like, I feel like and there's others like Mel from Till Death, and Natalie from Auburn Hour. Like, I feel like Australia has got such a cool contemporary wedding film energy going on. I feel like I keep looking at what Aussie's doing for inspiration on specifically the like the wedding film side of things. I try not to like look too much, because I don't want to like just replicate someone's style. But when I want to like keep up to date with what's in the wedding film world, I'm always getting most excited from what's coming out of Aussie. And then outside of wedding films, music videos, definitely. Paris Goebel, who's a director, choreographer, legend. I know her from dance. I did actually dance with her back in the day, and we did a little video together, which was super fun. But yeah, I mean, her style, like the way she, creates videos is amazing. Old 90s skate videos. I've watched like skating and stuff since I was a kid, and I'm always gravitating to the weird stuff that is in skate videos.
Like fisheye lenses, is that what you?
Fisheye lens and old VHS. I actually started. I bought an old mini DV camera and started bringing that to weddings because I wanted that like vintage VHS aesthetic in there as well. Terrence Malick's films, like I always look at his stuff for like colors. Not that I feel like I can make anything that looks like a Terrence Malick film, but you always look at it and go like, oh, that would be nice if I could make something that looks like that. And then you just go back to filming how you normally film. But it's always nice to daydream.
What about music? I mean, do you find music that you use in your films inspires the film, or do you choose music afterwards? How do you go through that process?
It's sort of in multiple parts. So you have an initial like looking for music phase where you just like seeing for what gets you inspired. But when it comes to actually like picking the music for films, I always build like the speeches and the audio stuff, like the dialogue first, and then start to like figure out, okay, what's the sort of the order of things. So I sort of build the story, and then I sort of pick out the vibes for that. So I'm like, how's the film going to like? What's the vibe of the film going to start with? Is it going to be high energy fun? Is it going to be like moody romantic? Is it going to be like bougie elegant? And then once I sort of like lock in on the sort of the vibes, I then go hunting for music based on those vibes. And because that I feel like narrows me down enough where I'm not like necessarily locked into like genres, but I'm certainly locked into like an energy of a song. Jesse Driftwood is a YouTuber that I watch a lot, and I've certainly learned from him is to like start off with a banger, and that grabs people's attention. And I've sort of latched onto that as a bit of a trope where like I always want to start off my films with something really exciting. It doesn't necessarily have to be like frenetic energy, but it has to be like engaging and exciting. And from there, we can go down into a more slow, composed, romantic sort of vibe from there.
What would you say is the main thing you want to improve upon in your next season? Do you have things that you think I need to work on that, or that's the thing I need to focus on more? It doesn't have to be artistically, it could be a business thing, but yeah, what do you think it's for you?
I definitely want to develop as a filmmaker in terms of like taking control over like the images I'm making. I've sort of always been, fly on the wall, let the photographer like do their thing, and I'll just like capture what I capture and stuff. But like the more I go along, the more I want to sort of get better at like crafting the images and stuff that I want to. It's always been a comfort zone for me to just be more reactive, I guess. So I guess I want to, moving into next season and moving forward, I want to just get better at being proactive with planning shots. Even just around things like I don't know, having like weigh in with the photographer on like photo locations or like setting up scenes. Because especially I gravitated away from that because in the early days I always would like I could see clearly when a videographer had like told a couple to do something,
Yeah.
and it looked super stiff and ugh. And I was like, I never want to do that. I always want to let them do their thing, and I'll capture it. And like that worked. It definitely like led to a candid, nice natural footage. But I feel like, okay, I've done that now. I've got my like natural candid footage down. I want to now see if I can work on doing the staged stuff well and do it, and because I feel like that's going to then, be able to elevate my work to doing stuff that you could never do by just watching what's happening and filming it.
Is it just in the Do you just mean in the portrait session, or do you mean in other parts of the day?
I mean, because I had a really good discussion with Andrew from Bottle Brush and this photographer Catherine Brooke the other day on my podcast, where we were sort of talking about Catherine's work. She's she's a wedding photographer by trade, but her personal work is these like beautiful, like ethereal, sort of fantastical portraits. And the whole discussion was based around like looking at her work and relating it to that elopement film that Andrew and Grace Bottlebrush did for Kate and Gabby, which is this like hyper stylized elopement film where Grace and Andrew got to have like full control over, like it was just Kate and Gabby like by a bonfire with this tent, and they had red lights and blue lights, and we're sort of like going, okay, like what if the wedding film wasn't filming the wedding day? What if it was like a portrait of this couple that we had full creative control over, and we could craft these scenes, and we could, have like a chaise lounge and a bonfire and stuff on a beach, and it just these beautiful, you sort of craft these beautiful, like, Terrence Malick-esque, visuals, sort of something that's sort of it's still a film about a couple and about their love, but it's something different to a traditional wedding film. And so we had quite a cool little discussion around that. And so I'm quite interested to sort of combine what photographers do with styled shoots, like styled weddings, like like fake weddings, but still have it as a real couple and be about them, but take full creative control over those visuals and make something really cool and special and different.
Obviously, you've been doing this for a little while now. So what would you say is your top tip for someone who might just be starting out in wedding videography? They're just dipping their toe in.
Get paired with the best photographers you can. Like that's something that I like looking back, because I got in so early and there wasn't many videographers around. I happened to get paired with really amazing photographers, who in terms of like my level of videography is down here and their level of like photography was way up here. Yeah. But because there wasn't many other options, that's who I got paired with. And that for me is 100% the thing that made me grow the most, was watching them work, like seeing how they saw light and directed the couple and what lenses they used and why, and how they saw a boring backdrop and made it look interesting, and how they controlled what was in their frame. And I learned so much from that I just wouldn't have been able to trying to figure it out on my own. So and it could be as simple as like pairing up with photographers like when they're doing either like couples shoots or styled shoots, smaller stuff, and just offering to like do even like behind the scenes videos for them for their social content. They'd be really grateful for that, and that'd be a great way to get your foot in the door and network and meet people. Because I get probably half my work from photographers referring me, so it's those networks and those relationships and those friendships are really important.
That's a great tip, actually, and I haven't had that one, so that's nice. So if people want to find you and have a look at your work, or if they want to find your podcast and the other stuff you do, where should they look?
Yeah, so my like wedding film stuff, side project films, Instagram and website and stuff, and then my podcast is Make Better Wedding Films. Andrew and Grace from Bottle Brush Films have just come on as co-hosts on that just last week, actually. So that's really exciting. So we're talking about all things wedding films over on there. So you can find us on Instagram, iTunes, all that stuff. Make Better Wedding Films. I'm sure you have like links and stuff in the show notes. Feel free to come hang out.
Great. Well, thanks so much for doing that, Ben, and for getting up slightly early because we're on different time zones. Really great to speak to you, though, and get a sort of New Zealand perspective on the wedding industry.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks to Ben for agreeing to come on and sharing his process and some top tips for newcomers. You can find ways to connect with Ben below, as well as links to other projects I have coming up, including my workshop. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.